Hey everybody, welcome back into another video. Today we're going to be talking about the ever elusive and difficult Coltrane changes and how you can actually use them outside of just playing over giant steps. So as most of you probably already know as jazz students and fans of the music, Coltrane came up with an incredible set of chord changes that he originally used over giant steps. Now, a lot of my students also have a lot of trouble figuring out where to use these chord changes outside of just the giant steps progression. But I'm here to tell you that there's a whole world of places that you can use this harmony over regular old jazz standards. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. How do we actually take this harmony, some of the innovations that Coltrane used, and actually use them over other tunes? Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to go over quickly what Coltrane changes actually are and how they work. So the short of it is that Coltrane used 3 different key centers, a major third apart from each other. So let's take a look at 3 keys starting in the key of B major, just like he does in giant steps, and moving down by minor thirds until we get to E flat major. So if we take B major and we go down a major third, we get to G major. Now if we move down a major third from G major, we get to E flat major. Now, what makes the classic Coltrane cycle sound is that he preps each key change with a dominant chord. So what we're going to do is, in between the B major and the G major, we are going to put the 5 of G major, which is a D7 chord. Now, after we land in G major, we're going to put the 5 of E flat major, which is a B flat 7 chord. Now, all of a sudden, it sounds like this. And that's giant steps right there. That is the sound of the giant steps progression. That should be pretty familiar to you if you've ever listened to that recording. Okay, so now how do we use this over a regular jazz standard that is not giant steps? Well, we're going to use it over a 2-5-1 progression because most jazz standards have 2-5-1 progressions in them. And we're going to use a 3-measure 2-5-1 progression, or what people would call a long 2-5-1. So what we want to start by doing is choosing a 2-5-1 in the key of E flat, because we know that this progression ends in the key of E flat, and we want to do the same thing. We want that resolution point to the E flat to stay the same. So normally our 2-5 would be F minor 7, 2 chord, to B flat 7, 5 chord, to E flat major 7, 1 chord. Now you'll notice that the length of a 3-measure 2-5-1 is the same as the length of the Coltrane cycle. So literally all we are going to do is superimpose our Coltrane cycle over the top of this. So instead of playing an F minor 7 chord, we're going to superimpose B major 7 to D7 over that first measure of the 2-5-1. Now what we're going to do over the B flat 7 chord is we're going to superimpose G major to B flat 7. And then, of course, we're going to land in the same place, which is right on E flat major 7 at the end of this. So now we have the ability to use this Coltrane cycle over any 2-5-1 that we play. And it's going to provide for a really distinct sound with a lot of tension in it. And that's the key here, is the tension and release. The first measure is going to be the most tense, because B major over F minor 7 is a really, really interesting sound. Then as we move through the progression, we build that tension and we release it right at the very end with our B flat 7 to E flat major 7. So great, now we know how to superimpose these chord changes over the top of a regular 2-5-1, but what do we play? This is a lot of information coming at us very, very quickly, and this is where most people get hung up. Well, I know what the changes are, but what the heck do I play over them? So here's going to be a couple of options for you. The first one is going to be to use literally just major triads over each chord. And this is my favorite option because there are lots of interesting things we can play just using triads. And the beauty of triads, as I've said in many other videos, is that it's the simplest and quickest and clearest way to outline a tonality. So if over B major 7, we simply play B, D sharp, and F sharp, that is going to tell the listener's ears this musician is playing in the key of B. There's no doubt about it at that point. So let's look at a simple example where over each one of these Coltrane chords, we are just going to play a major triad. Let's check out example number 1. Now, can you hear how nicely that sits and how well that conveys that particular Coltrane chord progression to you? Also notice the tension that happens, especially in measure 1. At first you go, wow, this is way out there because the notes are clashing with the chords so much. But then as the line moves through the measures, it becomes clearer to the ear that, okay, this person is following a certain pattern here. And that pattern is the Coltrane cycle. All right, let's check out one more line using just triads. So this one is actually a little bit more simple, a little bit more straightforward. We are just simply playing descending triads in some different inversions over this. So hopefully you're starting to get that sound in your ear. This might take a little while for you to get used to the sound of these chords superimposed over the top of a regular 2-5-1. But if you keep practicing it, you will get more used to it as you keep playing. All right, the second way that we are going to use this in a clear and consistent manner is by using the pattern 1, 2, 3, 5 of each chord. Now you might be thinking to yourself, wow, the 1, 2, 3, 5 is just so overplayed. This is what everybody plays over Coltrane changes, and you're right, but the reason that it doesn't sound as good as you want it to is simply because you're not being creative enough with your permutations of that 1, 2, 3, 5. So the key here is to play them in a bunch of different orders in an interesting way to make this 1, 2, 3, 5 sound like something that's much more advanced. So let's check out this pattern that I have written over the 2-5-1 using exclusively the 1, 2, 3, 5 language. Okay, so now we've gone over triads and 1, 2, 3, 5 patterns. I think this is the best way to start. Of course, there's a bunch of other things that you can do, but if you can harness these two ways of playing over the Coltrane changes and superimposing them over the 2-5-1s, you're going to be in good shape. You'll be ready to reach for some of those other things. It's quite a learning curve to do this. It's a very complicated progression. We all know that. So you've got to work on it for a while, and you've really got to get the basics of it down before you reach for something that's way more complicated. Okay, so to end the video, let's look at a real life example of how I would use this. So let's take the jazz standard, How High the Moon, which involves a lot of 2-5-1s, these long 3-measure 2-5-1s. And what I'm going to do is, over each one of them, I'm going to work backward from the 1 chord, go up by major thirds, and insert this Coltrane cycle in each of these keys. And I'm only going to use triads and 1, 2, 3, 5 patterns. And you're going to see that I can get some pretty cool results using this. I'm also going to show you that Coltrane cycle superimposed over the top of where the regular old 2-5-1 should be. So you will have a real life example that you can jump into almost right away and start playing this stuff. Okay, so now you know how the Coltrane cycle works. You know how to superimpose it over a 2-5-1 progression, and you know where to start with the triads and the 1-2-3-5 patterns. So now all that's left is to get out your instrument and start working on this stuff. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you feel like you got something out of this, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. We will be coming out with a lot more videos just like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon with another new video. Bye, everybody.